Got Aaron Freeman back here on ATL Day Ones, filling in for Tenitra Batiste today. I am Jarvis Davis. Don't go anywhere. Tenitra will be back. I'm telling y'all been tripping, man. Y'all calm down, man. She will be back. She is the star of this show. But guess what? We're gonna talk about another star right now. Bijan Robinson, obviously drafted in the first round for the Atlanta Falcons. Aaron Freeman picked him to come to the Falcons, and here he is. But one thing I start going through, Aaron, is the fact that, when these rookies come in, obviously they're going to be a certain level of expectation, right? And when you have a running back, drafted, as high as he was, it's kind of hard not to have high expectations. So, for me, I started doing a little digging, right? And started trying to figure out, like, what's a good number or what's a good level of expectation to expect from him. And I came across some very interesting numbers, right? I looked at Alvin Kamara back in 2017, your third-round pick for the New Orleans Saints, right here in the division, right? So it's kind of easy comparison. He was paired up with Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram kind of compares a little very similar to Tyler Algier, ramrod type of guy. Mark Ingram had about 230 carries that year. That's a good number, I feel, for Tyler Algier. And I think Alvin Kamara had over 120 carries that year, and he had 81 catches for 800 yards, 5 touchdowns, and he rushed for 8 touchdowns in that season, and went on end up getting the Offensive Rookie of the Year award that year. Are those numbers a little bit too high for you, or is that kind of where you fall? Where as far as as far as splitting the carries, the touches, and everything like that, this is kind of what Bijan Robinson needs. This type of role that he needs, the Alvin Kamara type role.
Well, I think Bijan can fill that Alvin Kamara type role for the Falcons. I mean, the question is going to be, will he get the passing opportunities that Kamara got in New Orleans, given the Saints' propensity to throw the ball and the Falcons' propensity not to throw the ball.
Absolutely.
But I think what's interesting is you go back to last year when Cordero Patterson came back from his injury starting in that Chargers game, and through up to, I think, the bye week, the Falcons had all three of their running backs and CP, Tyler Algier, and Caleb Huntley healthy. And if you look at the split that they had during that stretch of games, Patterson had about 50 carries. Algier had about 47 carries. Huntley had about 18 carries. You could also throw in Marcus Mariota with about 30 carries to make up the bulk of the Falcons' rushing attack during those 5 or so games. And I'm thinking that we'll see something similar with this three-headed backfield, where you'll probably get Bijan. I would probably project him to get the bulk of the carries, but I think the number between him and Algier, similar to what it was with Patterson in Algier during that stretch, will be very close. So like they'll kind of split carries, and then you'll get a couple of carries for CP sprinkled throughout. So like I did some number crunching because a listener for Locked On Falcons asked me sort of how big a role CP would have a couple of weeks back. And I kind of did a rough estimate. So I could see in terms of carries, like Bijan getting like 200, Algier getting like 180, and then maybe Patterson getting like 90, right? And to me, the question with those guys when it comes to like how many overall touches and how involved they're going to be in the passing game, it's really going to boil down to who is the guy that the team relies on in pass protection to stand next to Desmond Ridder a lot. And we saw in Patterson's first year, that was Mike Davis, and that's why Mike Davis continued to get a lot of looks late in the season. And last year, that kind of emerged to be Algier a little bit more than CP. Not to mention, I think, given some of the concerns of Falcons at the wide receiver position, we might see CP line up a little bit more out wide. But I thought Bijan was a really good pass protector in college. But at the same time, because I think Algier did such a good job, the Falcons don't necessarily need Bijan to be that every down player. But all this to say, I think probably by the time we get to the year's end, you'll probably see Bijan emerge as like the main guy, similar to how we saw Algier get so much better in the second half of last year. I kind of expect Bijan not to necessarily light the world on fire like week 1 or in September, but by the time we get to November, December, Bijan should be hitting his stride and starting to get more looks than Algier at that point in time. So I think ultimately you'll see Bijan probably get the bulk of the touches and carries, but it'll be for most of the season it'll probably be a roughly 50-50 split where both guys will probably average about 10 to 15 carries a game. And, hopefully you won't necessarily be able to tell the difference between the two in terms of the Falcons rushing offense. Maybe Bijan is a little bit more capable of breaking some of those longer runs, getting some of those explosive plays. But for the most part, whether it's Bijan, Algier, or Cordero Patterson in the game, the Falcons just going to be grinding teams down into the dust.
Yeah, man. That's the one thing I've always admired about Arthur Smith. The one thing about him, he's not going to overwork his guys. Like he's going to have like a set number, not a hard number, but like a lot of times he has a good idea of how many touches he wants all of his guys get before going into, as far as from a game plan standpoint, going into games. And I think he did a masterful job, like when he brought Cordero Patterson in. And I think you bring up a good point when you're talking about Mike Davis as far as that pass protection, because a lot of times, I know you got these questions too on Locked On Falcons. We got it a lot. When I was at the radio station I used to work for, he was like, why is Mike Davis playing in the game? There's no way, he's horrible. He can block. He can block on third down when Cordero Patterson got stuffed at the first two downs. You know what I'm saying? So those are some of the things that people need to pay attention to when you talk about rookie running backs and why those guys get on the field. That's why I thought Tyler Algier did an excellent job in preseason from a pass pro standpoint, and that was one of the reasons why he worked his way onto the field. And then you start seeing the production as the season went along, and he was like, okay, we can leave you here on third down. All right, cool. We're gonna use some more carries. You're gonna earn those things, and I think that just from a usage standpoint with the whole Bijan piece. I'm with you on the fact that I feel like he's going to be worked in. I don't think he starts in game one, but I do feel like he's going to be a key piece. And I think that the way the Saints used Alvin Kamara, just from a standpoint of like making sure they give him the rock on third downs, coming out of the backfield, and when they're in pass situations, I think Bijan is going to be able to take advantage of those situations because, like you said, you're going to have some guys, on the field, that you got to pay attention to, and Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And I want to ask you something about Kyle Pitts in just a second, but I think that Bijan is in a really good space to where he has the potential to, maybe grab an end of the year award, because of all of the personnel that they have, and obviously with the offensive line having the opportunity to maybe get a little bit better than they were last year. I really feel like there's going to be something there to kind of keep an eye on. I think that Bijan will. I feel like he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna walk on water. Turn water to wine. But I really do feel like this dude's gonna be super productive because he's in good hands with Arthur Smith from a play call standpoint. Now, Aaron, man, like, me, man, like I'm a guy that kind of, pay attention to the tea leaves, read up under the lines, pick up something, I'm like, all right, let me look up under the carpet here. There's a little bit something more to it, but I feel like, Kyle Pitts and Taquan Graham got injured in the same game, right? Correct? They got injured in the same game last year, right? Now, and from my understanding, they both tore up their knees, right? They tore a ligament in their knee, right? And I was up at practice. I saw Taquan Graham out at practice. He was actually moving around, running around and everything like that. And man, I'm talking to a couple people up at, Falcons training camp, some couple people cover team and all that stuff, just kind of snooping around. Ain't nobody seen Kyle Pitts, man. Like, nobody. Nobody seen the man. So, with that being said, being that it's June. It's mid-June right now. We're going into the last week or so of June. If we ain't seeing Kyle Pitts, how is he going to be ready for game one, Aaron?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because I talked about this the other day on Locked On Falcons, and I basically said until we get to training camp and he's missing practice in training camp, I'm not going to worry about it. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to assume that this is Arthur Smith being his very, very conservative self with injuries. We saw that in the first preseason he had, where he's like, I ain't playing nobody in the preseason.
Right.
I ain't playing nobody. Ain't nobody getting hurt on my
being a mistake too.
And so I think they're being extra cautious with Kyle Pitts, right? Like we don't really need Kyle Pitts in OTA.
Which makes sense, yeah.
we just kind of need him in August, right? And so
Yeah.
that he can start gearing up. So I'm assuming that's what it is. Now, if we get to that first week of practice and training camp and Kyle Pitts is still limited, I'm like, okay, wait, what's going on here? What's this all about? But until then, I'm not gonna panic too much about Kyle Pitts, hanging out. As long as it's not getting the Zion Williamson things, off the field, he'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't want to have Zion Williamson type conversations about Kyle Pitts. Lord knows, I'm sure you guys have been listening. If you heard the conversation about Zion Williamson, we do not want to be talking like that about Kyle Pitts come fall. Yeah, not interested in that at all.